Thank you for purchasing the Turris from Ride1Up. Let's jump right in and we'll show you how to assemble your new e-bike. For additional assembly tips, information, and the latest manual documents, please visit the support page for the Turris. Link in the description below. First things first, let's snag our clippers and cut the outside straps. Before we take the bike out of the box, you'll want to lean in and pull out the charger box, the small parts and toolbox, and the small white box containing your snazzy new Ride1Up beanie. You should also look for the right crank arm, which is usually located on the left side of the bike, just underneath the saddle. Now before we start pulling bikes out of the boxes, let's take a look at what is included with your new Turris. We've got the Turris Owner's Manual, a set of pedals, one labeled for the left side and one labeled for the right side, a set of hex wrenches, that snazzy beanie I mentioned earlier, your e-bike charger, a front and rear reflector, a small packet of grease, and a rubber stem cap. Now, we can get on to the fun stuff. We recommend getting a friend to help you remove the bike from the box, but you can also remove the bike yourself. It is easiest to remove the bike by grabbing the rear wheel and the top tube of the frame. Pull the bike out and set it beside the box in an upright position. It is recommended to get something to help stabilize the bike to avoid it from falling over. We also recommend keeping the box for about 30 days. You can use the box to gather up all packing material and recycle it according to local rules and regulations. Let's retrieve our handy clippers and start removing the packaging material. Let's start by removing some of the non-installed parts. We can start by removing the front fender, the saddle, and finally the front fork. Gently set these down and we'll use these later in the installation process. After these parts are removed, let's remove the rest of the packaging material. Always be careful when cutting straps near brake or electrical lines. When removing the handlebars, make sure to set those down gently. Before you proceed with the assembly, it's recommended to inflate the tires. Remove the tube cap and pump a few pounds of air into the tire. Stop and make sure the whole tire is seated to the rim. Once you've confirmed the tire is seated correctly, you can finish pumping the tube up with between 30 to 50 psi. Repeat the same steps for the rear wheel. Remember that rubber stem cap from before? Well, let's put that bad boy on there. Finally, let's remove the head tube protection and get ready to install the front fork. Remove the last bit of packing material, grab a 5mm hex wrench, and completely remove the top cap. Remove the spacers, dust seal, and compression ring. Remember this order as they will be reinstalled in the exact same order. The only thing left should be the crown race on the front fork. You're going to want to leave that one right where it is. Also, double check the headset bearings, they should be pre-installed. Next, lift the frame and insert the steer tube up through the head tube until the crown race rests firmly against the bottom bearing. First, install the compression ring. This will help line up the steer tube in the center of the head tube. Next, install the dust cover, followed by the two spacers. Now let's grab those handlebars that you gently set down earlier, place the stem over the steer tube, and tighten down the top cap bolt until you start to get some friction when turning the handlebars. Don't worry about tightening down the side stem bolts, we'll get back to that in a minute. Next, remove the packaging material and the small plastic bag containing the quick release skewer. Remove the plastic end cap and remove one of the conical springs. When reinstalling springs, make sure that the smaller side of both springs is facing inwards. Insert the skewer from the side opposite of the disc brake, and reinstall the small spring and plastic end cap. Rotate it a few times, but keep it nice and loose for the front tire installation. During the tire install, avoid touching the brake rotors. Lift the frame up and slide the front tire into the front fork, lining up the dropouts and the quick release skewer. Make sure the fork is fully seated. Once the tire is supporting the bike, this is a great time to put down the kickstand to help with the rest of the assembly process. Head back up to the front tire and tighten the plastic end cap until the quick release latch requires a firm amount of pressure to close. This may take a few tries to get just the right tension. Next, let's journey up to the headset and tighten up those side stem bolts using our handy 5mm hex wrench. If you still need to tighten the top cap bolt, always make those adjustments before tightening down the side stem bolts. This is a good time to make sure that the handlebars are aligned with the front wheel. Once they're aligned, we can adjust the cant of the handlebars. To do so, loosen the front bolts and adjust the handlebars either forward or backward to put the handlebars in the best riding position for you. And this is also a good time to align your handlebars centered in the stem. Make sure to utilize an X pattern when tightening down the faceplate bolts so that you are applying an even pressure on the handlebars. All faceplate bolts should be tightened to about 5 Nm or the torque listed on the stem. Now that the handlebars are installed, let's install the front brake caliper. Before we get too deep in the process, make sure the brake cable is routed inside the stanchions. Remove the front brake from the plastic bag, remove the red brake pad insert, and install the front brake on the left side of the fork using the 7mm hex wrench. You want the disc to be able to rotate freely without rubbing on the pads, so you may need to adjust the alignment of the brake pads to achieve this. The quickest way to do that is to leave the brake caliper slightly loosened and pull the brake lever. Once it has been centered on the rotor, you can finish tightening the brake caliper, releasing the brake to check that it has been centered properly. Once the brake caliper is installed, you can affix the hydraulic cable to the guide point on the front fork. Next, let's install the saddle. We'll start by applying a small amount of grease to the inside of the seat tube, and this will help the seat post glide in and out easier and avoid scratching the seat post. Once you've ensured the saddle is below the minimum insertion marks, you can adjust the saddle to the correct riding position and then close the quick release lever so the seat does not move. If the saddle is still loose, hold the clasp with your right hand and turn the nut clockwise with your left hand. Once that nut has been tightened, you can close the quick release lever. Next, we'll install the right side of the crankset. First, let's remove the additional packing material. Then, grab our small packet of grease and apply a fair amount of grease to the bottom bracket spindle. Next, slide the right side of the crankset over the bottom bracket spindle. Make sure this is installed at 180 degrees opposite the left crank arm. Then, grab the crankshaft bolt and tighten it until it is secure. Using your left hand, bring the rear derailleur arm towards the front of the bike, creating a lack of tension on the chain. Guide the chain over the crank arm and set it on the teeth in between the chain guide. Once the chain is securely fastened to the chain ring, you can release the tension with the left hand. Next, we'll install the pedals. Prior to installing, let's put a little bit of grease on the axles of both pedals. It's important that you pay attention to which pedal goes on which side. You can see the labeled stickers, but if no sticker is present, you can find the left or right stamped on the base of the pedal axle. Once you've selected the correct pedal, remember that the left pedal is tightened when turned counterclockwise, and the right pedal is tightened when turned clockwise. Start by hand tightening and finish securing the pedal with a 15mm wrench. Now, let's install the front light and front fender. Start by removing the pre-installed bolt. If the bolt is not pre-installed, you can find that bolt in the small parts bag with the additional bolts. Once the bolt is removed, put the front light and the front fender into place and begin tightening the bolt to secure them both to the rear of the front fork arch. Next, we're going to install the front fender support arms. Start by removing the pre-installed bolt, then attach the front fender support arm. For now, just make sure we have plenty of room between the front fender and the front tire. We'll do some fine adjustments to those in a bit. To fine-tune the fender spacing, you can utilize the fine adjustment points on the fender support arms to center and provide more space between the tire and the fenders. Now that the bike is looking cool, let's do a quick run through of how to operate the Turris display. To turn the bike on, press and hold the center power button. Once the display is on, you can use the top plus button to raise your level of pedal assist. This dictates how much power the motor will give you while riding. To lower the level of pedal assist, press the bottom minus button to lower the amount of power you will get from the motor. Pedal assist levels range from 0 to 5. In pedal assist level 0, you wouldn't get any assistance from the motor. The Turris display keeps track of several metrics, and you can cycle through those by pressing the center power button when the bike is on. To turn on the light, press and hold the top plus button, the light will come on, and you will see the light icon pop up on the display. To turn the light off, simply press and hold the top button again. The Turris is also equipped with a walk assist mode. If you find yourself in need of walking the bike, you can press and hold the bottom minus button and the motor will assist you. To stop this walk mode, simply release the bottom minus button. For additional display tips and advanced menu walkthroughs, you can check out the Ride1Up Resource Center. I know we're rearing to go, but before we go on our first ride, let's head to the rear and make sure that rear derailleur is straight and aligned with the frame to ensure smooth operation. Next, let's make sure our brakes are functioning properly. Give the brake handle a firm squeeze. You should feel some resistance and notice that the wheels do not move when the brake levers are pulled. You can do a walking test at slow speeds and test the effectiveness of the brakes. Now, your brakes may be making some noise for the first few miles, and that will go away as you ride your bike. But if you'd like to quicken the process, you can check out the links provided to see how to bed your brakes. To remove the battery, grab one of the two keys that are attached to the handlebars. Insert the key and turn it to the unlock position. When in the unlocked position, the battery will release. Place one hand under the battery and rotate the secondary locking latch to allow the battery to be fully removed. There's also a quick read light on top of the battery where you can tell just how much charge is left in your battery without having to turn the bike on. To insert the battery, start by seating the base of the battery to the bottom of the frame and bring the top of the battery up into place. Always make sure the battery is firmly locked back into the frame before riding. If you plan to be riding at night, you'll want to make sure your headlight is oriented correctly. The best starting point here is about 45 degrees, not horizontally. You can experiment with the angle to find the safest position for your riding speed and style. The reflectors and bolts can be found in the small parts bag. The front reflector can go on the handlebars wherever fits your setup, and the rear reflector is installed on the seat post. The front fork has two adjustments you can make to fine-tune your riding experience. The first is the lockout feature. You can stiffen the fork by turning the lockout knob in the locked position. If you want to utilize the travel of the suspension, leave it in the unlocked position. The second adjustment is the preload adjustment. Preload adjusts the amount of force needed to initially move the suspension, and you can experiment with different levels to suit your riding style. Another aspect you may need to adjust is the kickstand height. Using a hex wrench, loosen the small bolt in the rear of the kickstand. Once that's been loosened, you can extend or retract the kickstand. Just remember to tighten it back up afterwards. Now that your Turris is assembled and you've made some pre-ride adjustments, it's time to get out there and ride. For more information or support, please contact our support team over at Ride1Up.com.